Whether you're brand new or deep in the game, we're breaking disc golf down one term at a time. This is Defining Disc Golf. Most disc golf manufacturers stamp their discs with four numbers that indicate the expected flight of a disc. These are called flight numbers. It's important to note that flight numbers are just a guide, and they are not an exact science. Every manufacturer approaches flight numbers a little bit differently, and you have to be careful comparing flight numbers from one company to another. Flight numbers consist of four numbers that are written in the order of speed, glide, turn, and fade. The first number represents the disc's speed. This is a measure of how fast the disc needs to be thrown in order to achieve its maximum potential distance and expected flight characteristics. Different disc types fall into different speeds. Typically, you'll find putters between speeds 1 and 3, approach discs between 3 and 4, mid-ranges between 4 and 6, fairway drivers between 6 and 9, and distance drivers between 10 and 14. However, some disc manufacturers will approach these numbers differently. You may find 3-speed mid-ranges, 9-speed distance drivers, and so on. Discs with a higher speed rating generally require more power to get the desired flight, and are not ideal for beginners. The second number represents a disc's glide. This is a measure of how much the disc will generate lift during flight. Discs with a higher glide rating will stay in the air longer and travel further, making them good for long-distance shots. The last two flight numbers describe the two phases of flight, high speed and low speed. When you throw a disc golf disc, immediately after leaving your hand, the disc is at its highest speed and will continue to slow down until it reaches the ground. The third number represents a disc's turn, which occurs during the high-speed phase of flight. This is a measure of how much the disc will move to the right for a right-handed backhand throw, at high speed or early in the disc's flight. Simply reverse that direction for a right-handed forehand or a left-handed backhand. Turn ranges from +1, no turn, to -5, a lot of turn. Discs with a higher turn rating won't turn at all, while discs with a very low turn rating may turn all the way over and roll along the edge of the rim. The fourth number represents a disc's fade, which occurs during the low speed phase of flight. This is a measure of how much the disc will fade to the left for right-handed backhand throws at the end of its flight. Once again, reverse the direction for a right-handed forehand or a left-handed backhand. Discs with a higher fade rating, up to 6, will finish their flight harder and faster than those with a lower rating, as low as 0. The way a disc flies can be affected by a number of factors, such as the thrower's technique, wind conditions, and the disc's wear and tear. For beginners, discs will almost never fly like the flight numbers say they will. Beginners should focus on choosing discs that feel comfortable in their hand and practicing their throwing technique, rather than getting too caught up in flight numbers. However, if you are trying to use flight numbers as a general guide, beginners should focus on using discs with a lower fade rating and a negative turn rating. And those are flight numbers in disc golf. Flight numbers are used to describe a disc's flight, but there are also other terms that describe the overall flight characteristics of a disc. Those terms refer to what we call stability. The terms stable, overstable, and understable are used to describe the flight characteristics of a disc. Flight numbers can give you a hint to whether a disc is likely to be overstable, understable, or stable. A stable disc is widely regarded to have a neutral flight. It will fly relatively straight when thrown correctly. It will hold its line and maintain its angle of release throughout its flight, without turning too much to the right or fading too much to the left on a right-handed backhand throw. Stable discs are ideal for straight shots or for trying to hit specific gaps. Stable discs will often have flight numbers that end with inverse numbers, such as -1-1, -2-2, and even 0-0. Here is an example of a stable disc showing a neutral flight. An overstable disc is characterized by a reliable, consistent fade. Overstable discs are useful for shots that require a strong movement in one direction, or for fighting against headwinds. We'll discuss how discs are affected by wind in a future video. Overstable discs require a lot of power to throw, and are often used by experienced players. Overstable discs often have flight numbers that have +1, 0, or sometimes -1 turn, and anywhere from 2 to 6 fade. The higher the fade number, the more overstable the disc should be. Here is an example of an overstable disc showing an overstable flight. An understable disc is characterized by an increased tendency to turn early in its flight at high speeds. Understable discs are useful for shots that require a gentle turning flight and can be helpful for players throwing with less power. It can also enable players to create different shot shapes, but still utilize a backhand throw. Once again, here's an example of an understable disc showing a turning, understable flight. It's important to note, though, that a disc's stability can be affected by factors such as wind, elevation, and the thrower's technique. Beginners should focus on choosing discs that feel comfortable in their hand and practicing their throwing technique rather than getting too caught up in stability ratings. As players improve their skills, they may find that they prefer a certain stability of disc for a certain type of shot, and that is stability in disc golf. Subscribe to our channel for in-depth disc comparisons, plastic and disc analysis, as well as interviews with influential people from the world of disc golf. Or click the link in the description to see our full Defining Disc Golf playlist. For Six Sided Discs, I'm Greg. We'll see you in the next one. If you like this content and want to see more, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, or supporting us on Patreon. Your support makes this content possible.